Hello, my name is Christian Renault. I'm a director of PAFN, which is the Pembroke Area Field Naturalist Club. And I'm going to talk about owls that we have in our area and how to identify them or try to find them out. So the most common owl, and they're never very common anyways, but the easiest one to see is the barred owl. The barred owl is called this way because it has bars on its breast, and it's easy to identify because it has dark eyes. Most other owls have yellow eyes, but this one has dark eyes. The barred owl has a rounded body, it has sort of a white mustache, and they also have streaks, the bars on the breast, but it also has a shorter pointed tail compared to other species, so that makes it easy to see. They are very silent, so you cannot hear them. I was surprised to all of a sudden see a barred owl next to me, or just a few meters away, and never heard it come, and it wasn't there a minute before. The barred owl would be in the woods, and the good time to see them really is in the winter, when, especially at the end of the winter, at the mating season. Mating season starts at the end of March for them, and they start hooting around, and they have a special call that is very easy to distinguish, that in English we try to imitate by saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?" And we can play back some tapes of that song and they answer easily to it if they are around. They are territorial, and on some owl surveys, if you move every 2 kilometers, there's a good chance on some roads in the woods, there's a good chance that every 2 kilometers you will hear another couple. So if you call for them to try to see if there's any, the best time is probably during dusk, when they're starting their hunting, and they are sometimes in full hunting mode, and they are territorial, so they're going to see who's trying to bother them. The problem with that, though, if you use some bird calls to try to attract owls, you distract them from catching prey, and sometimes they don't catch a prey until too late, and they're wasting a lot of energy, especially when it's very cold in the winter. The next species that would be maybe most abundant is the saw-whet owl. They like to be in wet areas, and of course saw-whet is not written W-E-T, it's W-H-E-T, because of the sound they make. The sound they make is a bit like a saw that you play with. The lumberjacks were playing with saw, sometimes they would make funny noises, and that's why they call them the saw-whet. They go. So they're fairly easy to recognize. They're smaller than the barred owl, but they like the wetlands, or especially the wet forest. And they're very quiet usually. They don't call as loudly as other species of owls, but they can be found fairly easily if you go to the right habitat, and they hunt for smaller prey. In the winter we rarely see them because they tend to migrate south, but at the end of the winter, when the snow has melted, quite often you can see them, and they call for mates. So if you go to the right habitat you might see them. Another species that we find here sort of commonly in the winter, and depends, it goes by waves, it's the snowy owl. Snowy owls migrate in the area in the winter only if there's a poor amount of rodents in the tundra. They like flat areas, but they like to have posts in those flat areas so that they can spy on prey or listen for them. So if you go in the countryside, away from woods usually, but in places where there's a lot of fields and just a few trees or posts, they will like to go on top of trees. Snowy owls come in different coloring. Males are usually, mature males are all white, or just about, they just have a few specks. The females have more specks on them, a few little spots, but the immature are almost totally gray. They're white, but with so many streaks of gray that they look grayish. So you see their face is sort of white, and then the rest is sort of grayish. And these are the ones we see the most in the winter, because the immatures, having less experience to hunt, they quickly get discouraged if they don't find any food up north, so they migrate south. They are usually the first ones we see. And the white males and the mature females we see a bit less, because they migrate only if the food is poor towards the end of the winter, in middle or end of the winter. Another species we might see once in a while are here. They're not as common though, they are fairly rare. The great horned owl. They will go to almost any habitat. I heard them once in my backyard. They attack almost anything from skunks to hare to rabbits to small rodents to even doves, ruffed grouse. They attack just about anything, they don't care. They attack crows, they eat anything that they can find. They like all kinds of habitats. We rarely see them in plains though, mostly in the woods, but they are fairly easy to identify. They're big. They have two pointed egret, little feathers that look a bit like ears standing out, yellow eyes, and their colors are usually brownish back and paler abdomen. Mm-hmm. Another interesting species that I really love is the great gray owl. They go in our area only by waves. It seems like almost every 4 years something happens. They reproduce in the tundra in the boreal forest. And there are some, maybe 2 or 3 couples that nest in Algonquin Park, not too far from here. But right here in Pembroke area, we rarely see them. They seem to come only at the end of the winter when the food is poor out in the boreal forest or the tundra. So last year we saw one, and 2 years ago, maybe 3 years actually, we saw one in the area of Pembroke. Just by chance driving around, and all of a sudden my son said, "Oh, look, a raven! Now look at that's not a raven, that's a great gray owl." So they're a big bird. They're about 2 feet tall, and they have a rounded head. Their body is mostly gray, hence the name, but speckled with a beautiful plumage. And they have kind of a mustache, a white mustache, but the yellow eyes distinguish them from the barred owls, and they're bigger as well. Again, their flight is very quiet. I've seen them in farms, in wetlands, and never in the forest though, but at the edge of the forest, yes, they would be found easily in fields or at the edge of the field. So sometimes they will stand in a tree at the edge of a farm. The only times I've seen great gray owls in our area is usually at the end of February and early March, as if the food had been depleted up north and they migrated here for food supplies. The other species is the short-eared owl. I've seen only once, not too far from my place, on a farmland. They love to have flat areas. They go near marshes and everything. They hunt for prey on flatlands and near wetlands. And I've only seen one, and it was at dusk. The sun had been set for at least half an hour, and just by chance as I was driving, I saw one land on a post, and I had just the time to slow down and watch and look at what it was, and that's what it was, near the road. So I was very lucky that time, but that's the only time I've seen one. But we know they're around, but they're scarce. Mm-hmm. And the last species of owl that we can have here once in a while is the northern hawk owl. I've only seen them once here. I was really lucky. I've seen that species as I was driving around because somebody had seen one in some area. I went to where they had seen it, couldn't see it at all, but I went to a spot where I know snowy owls are, and I just wanted to see a snowy owl as a consolation. But I was surprised to see this northern hawk owl. They are a fascinating bird. They fly a bit like hawks, and they can hunt by night or during the day. And they have a very fascinating flight, very quick and also quiet. But they're faster than most other owls. Owls usually are not very fast birds. They have a slow flight that keeps it quiet, keeps their flight quiet so they can surprise their prey. But the northern hawk owl gives just a few wing beats and they fly really fast, and they can pounce on small prey very quickly. They have yellow eyes, and they have beautiful long feathers on top of the head, so when they turn it makes them look a bit fancy. And they have a fairly pale back with a few streaks, but they're very slender. They look more like a hawk than an owl, so that's why they call them the northern hawk owl. Mm-hmm.